Welcome to the Unlist. During the course of this channel's brief life, I have talked about all sorts of things. In some ways, I think I've maybe produced too many episodes too quickly, due to this being a huge hobby interest of mine and me devoting a lot of my time to it because it's fun. I may have overproduced content and thus leave a large legacy in a short period of time worth of episodes featuring everything from stuff involving the online fragrance community itself, a favorite topic of mine, to fragrance genres, to various unlists of fragrances, hence the name of this channel, this video series, and of course individual perfume materials. I've talked about different personality types, collectors versus enthusiasts, people who curate versus just amass an endless variety of things. I've talked about influencers and their profit and fame driven motives, and tastemakers who more or less like to hold court and make their opinions everyone else's. I've talked about major industry and all the cynicism involving it, all the dystopian late stage corporate capitalism that drives the endless rollout of insipid fragrances we all suffer through today. Plus, I've talked about all of the various niche stuff and how that turned into Designers 2.0, but at a higher price tag. And then all the indie stuff, and more recently, the artisanal perfumes. But one thing I have not talked about is the roadmap through all of this. Like, I don't really want to instruct someone how to Fraghead, right? I don't want to give you a IKEA instruction set with pictorials telling you how to be a person in this community or how to enjoy fragrances, but some people may appreciate a bit of a flowchart style or roadmap style instruction set that really is more of a suggestion set, like how to potentially maximize your pleasure in this hobby, right? That's harmless. You can take bits and pieces from it, make it your own, or just take it into consideration under advisement and then go do something entirely different. But I thought I might present to you a bit of a roadmap, or at least use my journey through collecting and enjoying fragrances as a reference case in what you may decide you want to do as you tick off the months and years and dollars spent, right, on all this stuff. So here is my official, unofficial, suggestive roadmap then for being an enthusiast in the online fragrance community. First things first, most of us come from enjoying perfumes typically as a practical thing, as a toiletry, part of a grooming routine, or you get sucked up into the zeitgeist of perfumes being used to attract attention from others, whether it's a status symbol, a flex, whether it's to get sexual attention or romantic attention, whatever your case may be. That's typically where it starts. And then from there, we develop tastes and curiosities. And before you know it, a guy with an average of 3 bottles, okay, sometimes as much as 6 before it seems weird, right? Typical 3 to 6 perfume, average person. Before you know it, they own a dozen, and then 2 dozen, and then 50, and then 100, and then guess what? They're a fraghead, they're a collector, they're an enthusiast. They are not the normal person anymore. And there's something about that. On one hand, when you cross that threshold, 2 things change for you. One, most marketing and mainstream perfumes are no longer pitched towards you. I say that because once you cross that threshold from casual user who follows trends, who wants to stay relevant, who cares about what others think, who will use a perfume up and then not replace it if they think it is passé, right? You move on from that mindset to somebody who looks for themes, genres, styles of perfume, things that fit you on a more personal level. And frankly, the majority of what's being made out there is not made for a person like you. It is made for the person that jumps through the hoops that cares about the algorithm, okay, that wants clout, all right, Riz or whatever the kids call it these days. The bulk of mainstream perfumes are made for that person, the person who's always playing catch up, keeping up with the Joneses. So they care about what's hot and what's not. They will not rebuy a fragrance. Now, we've done historical pieces about how years ago that wasn't the case, how people had brand loyalty. People would wear the same perfume for their whole life, like nothing but Chanel No. 5, nothing but Paco Rabanne, yada, 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 right? But that customer base doesn't earn the fragrance houses as much money as someone who's constantly changing, right? The constant change and search for novelty grinds out profits much more quickly than someone who will just continuously rebuy the same perfume for the rest of their lives. Yeah, they used to go after that customer, but now that customer has been more or less made extinct, they no longer cater to that person either. The signature scent wearer is more or less gone the way of the dodo, unless you make it your mission statement to do that, to operate that way, right? And some of us out there do. We like to fancy ourselves modern day dandies as true gentlemen, right? We have cufflinks and whatnot, and we like the concept of having a signature fragrance or whatever, but it's okay. You can do both. You can have a large collection and also have a signature. I've got a signature and I've also got a large collection, or I have what I consider to be my signature. Maybe I don't wear it as often as I should with that title granted to it, but it's whatever. The biggest thing about this is there are no rules. I've made this statement before. There really are no rules. You cannot do a wrong thing. All right, wearing a fragrance meant for a different gender, wearing a fragrance that people think is for an older or younger age group, wearing a fragrance that is meant for one situation, but you're wearing it for another. There are no rules. Wear that clubber to work. Wear the office fragrance to the club. Wear that women's fragrance if you're a guy. Wear that guy's fragrance if you're a woman. Wear the thing that you've been told is only for summer, but wear it in the winter. There are no rules. Do what you want. It's your perfume. You're the one that has to be okay wearing it. Everyone else should be secondary, okay? But again, some of that doesn't really apply until after you've crossed the threshold from the casual person into the enthusiast. Now, the second thing that changes for you is you no longer like to take suggestions, right? And this isn't really just suggestions from sales associates, but this is also suggestions from friends. This is suggestions from influencers, from stuff that comes at you unsolicited. It's different if you subscribe to someone's channel and you signed up for their content. It's different if you're in a group of friends whose opinions you trust, like a group of friends on Base Notes or Fragrantica that you always hang around. You'll be more inclined to listen to what they have to say. But once you cross the threshold, not only does the mainstream marketing no longer apply to you, but you are someone who no longer wants suggestions from the peanut gallery, as they say. The comments from the peanut gallery, the unsolicited, try this out. The unsolicited, here's the latest banger. The unsolicited, best-selling perfume. You don't care. You don't care. In fact, the more you hear about how hot something is, the more you hear about how good something is, the less you actually want to smell it. Sounds a bit contrarian, yes, but that is one of the biggest things about crossing over into the enthusiast space, is you want to strike out on your own. And you only want confirmation bias, as I have said before in my video concerning that. You only want people whose opinions line up with yours to give you advice. And when you run across something that doesn't fit your narrative, it creates what? Cognitive dissonance. We've already covered that too. See, I'm bringing this all together for you. It all makes sense. So you start to carve out your own reality within the context of the online fragrance community. Whether it's you place magical value on oak moss or vintage materials or naturals, or whether you take a more scientific approach and you learn about what perfume materials actually do and what they're actually made of. Some go down the science path, some go down that weird cult-like religious path. It's fine. Ultimately, if you're not hurting anybody, I don't care. I really don't. I pick on you guys all the time. I talk the shit, but at the end of the day, If you're in your corner, staying in your lane, you can worship Koros all you want. You can nitpick over percentages of perfume oil or whatever your deal is all you want. I don't care. As long as you're not hurting anybody else, you're not barging into someone else's house and shouting down on them. If you do that, then you and me have a problem if you start doing stuff like that. But that's the big thing, all right? Now, from there, we've established you seek out your own stuff, and the majority of what's being pitched no longer applies to you. That's why I said 1 and 2. Mainstream marketing doesn't apply to you, and you don't like unsolicited suggestions. So you are on your own, exploring the wild and woolly world of being a hobbyist where perfume is concerned. And you know, there's a growing number of people of increasingly younger age that this applies to now. There are people putting out articles in newspapers and magazines about people 15 years old buying bottles of Parfums de Marly, looking at bottles of Creed and Byredo at Tom Ford. The sort of thing where people my age, when we were 15, we didn't even know Creed existed. Most of us barely knew what Chanel was, other than a really expensive brand that we couldn't afford at the time. So I don't know where these 15-year-olds are getting this money to go get bottles of Leighton, unless they're, robbing places, right? They're using the little remotes to carjack a Kia and then running the Kia through a storefront and smashing and grabbing all the perfumes. I don't know how they're getting bottles of this stuff. But society is generally falling apart anyway, as you've seen. The decline of Western civilization is upon us. So maybe that's how they're getting all their Creeds and their Tom Fords. They're looting the stuff from stores, all right? Or they're buying it from fencers. One of the two. But it's unfathomable for me to see a 15-year-old, 12-year-old rocking something that costs $600 at retail, right? It's like, where's this money coming from? And I don't think there's that many rich kids out there, okay? There's just not that many of them. I kind of refuse to believe that. So they're hustling some sort of way. Because when I was 15, I had Nautica. Okay, guys? I had Nautica, and I had Tommy, and I had Avon. That's what I had, okay? Bottle of Brut when I was 15. Didn't have no Creed or no Parfums de Marly. Now, as I was saying, the roadmap goes out before you, and you kind of have to decide not just how much money you want to put down. That's the one people always seem to think of first, but no, it's space. Space is actually more valuable to you than money because due to all the gray market stuff, and I mentioned the people that fence stolen property. Yeah, you can get your perfumes from some shady places if you want to. I'm not going to tell you not to. I won't do it, but I'm not going to tell you not to. You do you. Just don't get me involved, right? But it is possible to live way beyond your means with perfume. Maybe not with like champagne, maybe not with jewelry, maybe not with watches, maybe not with leather goods. But with perfume, it is very easy to live beyond your means because of all of the discounters, all of the gray market stuff, all of these flash sales you see, okay? You can get things for half the price, a third of the price, or less. Big brands that are $600 can be $200. Brands that are $300 can be $125, $150. Brands that are $100, $120 can be like $35, $40, $50 if you know where to look. So you really should not say money is your number one priority. It should be space. And I say that because if you live in an apartment like I do, 980 square foot, and you devote a whole mid-century curio cabinet, which is like this big, okay, it's like this tall and like this big, it's like this, and you fill it with like 300 bottles of perfume, and then you add another shelf system right next to that on the wall using tracks, the shelf tracks, and then another 100 some odd perfume bottles goes up on that, you're pushing 500 bottles of perfume. And you no longer have a dining room because that stuff is sitting in what would have been your dining room, right? It's in your little dining nook now. And it's like, wow, this is a lot of perfume. And I live in a place under 1,000 square feet, okay? So that's the thing. If you're someone that has like basically a big single family home, which would these days be like $1 million home or more, okay? So if you got $1 million house And you've got all kinds of extra rooms, dens, okay, drawing rooms, various offices off to the side, spaces that can be utilized for hobbies, okay, for things other than bedrooms. If you have rooms that are not strictly bedrooms, you have the space to put a man cave or whatever in there. You can have 1,000 fragrances, 1,500 fragrances, whatever. You've got a club basement, like in that 70s show with the wood paneling and the carpet and the pool table in the middle. You got that situation? Well, then guess what? You can put 5,000 fragrances in a place like that. Your whole club basement can be one giant museum if you have the space. That's why space should be your consideration, not money. There are plenty of millionaires who live in condos. Just condos. Not big mansions, condos, okay? They've got all the money in the world, but not enough space. Space is more valuable to you. You need to mark that down. Very important. After that, you determine how much perfume you can actually have. You then need to determine your wearing habits. And this is why I tell people to use base notes. Some of you prefer Fragrantica, I get it. The bulk and majority of you, I guess, prefer Fragrantica. I don't know why. They've got a nice directory, but their social scene is absolute garbage. But base notes, which is what I constantly stand. I stand the base notes. You can track how many times you wear perfume, how often you wear perfume, and you can see every individual instance of when you've worn the perfume. You have massive reams of metadata about every time you've worn a fragrance and the total number of times you've worn it. And if you continue to log your wears consistently using a platform like Base Notes, or if you're crazy and want to make your own spreadsheet, go ahead and do your own Excel sheet. It's all up to you. I don't care. I would just use Base Notes. It's easier. But if you do that, you can determine over time what fragrances you really truly like and which ones you think you like but you don't. And that helps you stop the hoarding. And this is the thing. A lot of people confuse collecting for hoarding or hoarding for collecting. But endlessly acquiring more fragrances that you wear one time and then never touch again. You end up with thousands of fragrances that you don't really know anything about. Just all these bottles sitting on a shelf that you don't touch. Because the fragrances you actually wear are on like a little table somewhere. Your 20 or your 30 rotational fragrances, and the other 4,000 bottles back there are just there for show, right? Because you just continue to buy and buy and buy. Now, again, if that's how you want to be, I'm not saying you can't be that way. But I'm speaking to the rational, level-headed person here. And the roadmap I'm laying out before you dictates once you determine what your space is, you determine what you actually wear the most. Then from that point forward, you can determine whether you even need backups or not, whether you even need more fragrances in that style. Maybe you have too many fougères. Maybe you have too many chypres. Maybe you have one too many aquatics. You're really just wearing the same 3 aquatics, and all the other ones you have sit there. Maybe you're only wearing the same 10 fougères, and the other 50 you have, for a total of 60, don't get touched. They get dusty. Your last worn instance of a particular fragrance is 5 years ago, if you've been following and logging your fragrances. You learn real fast what your actual habits are and what could take up space in your collection and what could stand to go. Because you can't endlessly collect. Even if you have enough space to fill an entire vault and create a store basically inside your house, you will still eventually reach a critical threshold. It might take a lot longer for you, right? If you have that kind of space to work with, but you'll eventually get there. So you have to map these things out. And at the end of the day, there comes a point where you decide you're not curious anymore. As much as I like to talk about being open-minded and looking towards the future, there is a point in everyone's hobby life cycle of fragrance collecting that they just stop liking what's coming out. They are satisfied. They're happy. They are basically done. They're not done necessarily sampling or reviewing or talking about new things, but as far as buying full bottles, they're done. That phase comes for all of us. Some of us don't want to admit it, but it does. And I'm telling you, just like they always tell you to plan your 401k or whatever, I'm telling you to plan for that day. Plan for the day to come when you lose most interest in new fragrances, whether it's the 2010s or the 2030s and we're not there yet for you. Whatever that time comes, you're like, you know what? I just don't like the way things have gone. I think I'm done. I will keep my eyes open for a new thing from my favorite brands or my favorite perfumers or whatever. Okay, it's fine. Even people who are basically retired may still find an occasional new release they enjoy. It's possible. Never say never, right? That's a mistake. But by and large, you're like, I'm happy with what I have. All I want to do now is explore. All I want to do now is sample, write, or do videos. I no longer want to acquire. And you should plan for that day. Whether it's a small cabinet of 100 perfumes or a cabinet of 500, whether you've rotated out 1,000 fragrances in that 100-piece cabinet, whether you've rotated out 5,000 fragrances in that 500-piece collection, whether you've bought everything and kept everything you've ever bought, there will come a point where you're like, yeah, I'm just not interested anymore. I have what I have, and I want to use it up. Plan for that day. Because when that day comes, and this is the next part of the roadmap, and this is where I leave off the video, and I sign off for you guys. But when that day comes, when you shift, you need to make the crucial decision that you are done speaking for yourself. You are done acquiring fragrances for yourself. But you are not done being interested in perfume as a whole. You still want to speak for the changes that may come down the road, the interesting new developments, new materials, new styles, reemergence of old styles, okay? All that stuff. Wherever the perfume hobby takes you, you're not done talking about that. You just maybe not adding any more bottles because you're happy with what you have. But you don't become out of touch. That is the next part of the roadmap for you. Once you have acquired and created your little island of perfumes that speak of your taste, of your era and time, all of that stuff, the next step for you is to just continue to keep an open eye, an open ear. Like I said, maybe nothing will ever tickle your fancy enough that you want to buy it. Maybe you'll be like Luca Turin, who seems to have hung his shingle, but still subjects himself to things that he would never even think about actually seeking out. Whatever you do, you be conscientious, and you be courteous, and you help guide the new people who come along after you've already decided you're done, right? You be that elder, so to speak, in the community, the person whose opinion everyone trusts, because not only do you have a certain taste that everyone knows, but you're also a no-nonsense person, and you're willing to smell something and go, yeah, that's good, yeah, that's bad, even if it's not for you. Even if it's not for you. You be a positive, contributing member of the community. You be an open-minded person. You continue to enjoy the art of perfume itself. And otherwise, just have whatever it is you're going to have and wear it and enjoy it. Okay? Don't lord it over anyone's head. No one likes that stuff. But that is like the final phase, really, of being someone in this hobby. The first phase of discovery, the second phase of acquisition and expansion, and then the third phase, where you basically sit back, let someone else take over, and just say your piece when appropriate. I'm getting close to the third phase. I'm not going to lie. I'm getting there. I'm getting real close to being that person that goes, hey, I'm just going to sit back and let things be as they may and just enjoy my stuff. I'm not there yet, but when I get there, I'll let you know. Hopefully you've enjoyed my roadmap video. This is the Unlist. Catch you next time.